I've been thinking lately about how some seasons are much easier for us to entertain and join social gatherings as a family than others. For example, winter is really hard for us with illness, and many Christmas gatherings aren't very allergy friendly overall. But upon reflection, fall. Fall is my family's season. Our seasonal allergies aren't as bad as in spring, and apple themed activities can so easily be adapted to be allergy safe for us. I've decided to embrace this season as one where I want to plan get togethers with our closest friends. In this video, I want to share with you how I made an allergy friendly caramel apple bar that no one will know is dairy free unless you choose to tell them. Let's talk caramel. If you want just one variety of dairy-free caramel or many, there are lots of fantastic recipes to try out. Here I have a store-bought version, a homemade, and one using a canned sweetened condensed oat milk or coconut milk that I cook in the Instant Pot. All three have their strengths, but all are delicious. Did you know that Dollar Tree has a dairy-free caramel sauce? Here is a look at the ingredient list. Next is a version made in the Instant Pot with the dairy-free sweetened condensed milk. Have you seen these cute little cans yet? I'll tell you, they're delicious and convenient for lots of desserts. Here is a look at the ingredients of each one, and note that all three do contain coconut. Even the sweetened condensed oat milk version has coconut oil in it. Now, I made this last year and loved it, but I made the version where you submerge the entire can in water in the Instant Pot. It was delicious, but you need to plan ahead to make that version because the can needs to sit overnight in the Instant Pot to cool down to room temperature to make sure it's safe to handle. I decided to try today another version, transferring the contents to a glass jar. It worked wonderfully and can be done much quicker than the version where you submerge the jar. You'll note here, though, that I didn't actually follow the directions apparently, and you were supposed to add water halfway up the jar as the recipe in the description box states. Oops, it was still super tasty, but maybe doesn't have as much of a caramel development as it would have had, so follow the directions as written for more complex caramel. Also, maybe extend the cook time a little bit if you want a deeper caramel and a thicker sauce. Make sure to pour water in halfway up your jar and put the lid on your Instant Pot. Make sure your sealing ring is in correctly and that the valve is on sealing, not venting. Then set the cook time for 35 minutes or 40 for that thicker sauce. Once the time is up, let it sit a bit more and carefully remove the jars to a hot pad to cool down. It was much, much thicker as it cooled down to room temperature. Now let's talk homemade caramel. The best part about this recipe is that it is adaptable to whatever dairy-free substitutions are safe for your family. Just use your favorite milk substitute and a stick version of dairy-free butter. It is not recommended to use a tub version or margarine though because it has more water content. If you're new to making caramel, I recommend a non-stick pan if you have one, but it's not a requirement. Keep your heat on medium-low and be patient with your caramel and don't walk away. This takes about 15 minutes of hands-on time, and if you leave it, it might be ruined. If at any point your kids are telling you over your shoulder that you ruined it, remind them to hold their judgment until the very end because good things take some effort. When it gets clumpy and you start to panic, just keep stirring. When it finally is all liquid, move the sugar off your heat to add in your dairy-free butter and milk, and then switch to a whisk. Keep whisking. Don't give up. I had to slowly put it back on the heat to finally get it incorporated. Then add in your salt as much as you desire. This recipe will taste much more like a salted caramel if you add the full amount, but I recommend if you want just a general caramel to cut the salt in half. I cooked this for another minute or two and it developed a deep dark caramel color and resulted in a thick caramel perfect for caramel apples. I didn't get straining the caramel on video, but if you do have lots of little sugar clumps, then push the caramel through a fine mesh strainer into a bowl before transferring it to your jar.
Alrighty, so it is time for some caramel reflections here. As you can see, each caramel really does look quite different. These two are the same recipe. The only reason the colors are different right now is because these were refrigerated from making them yesterday, and this one's fresh. Okay, so my first thoughts on all of these. One, my husband said that the Kent's caramel that I found at Dollar Tree tastes exactly like what you would get on like a caramel macchiato at your favorite coffee shop. It is very pourable, even still from the fridge after refrigerating it overnight. And so this is definitely perfect if you're wanting to dip something. So it would be really great on top of your favorite safe ice cream. It would be great for like the caramel apple bar that I'm going to be showing in this video. I thought it tasted a little fake myself, but it's also a flavor profile that we're kind of used to having. So for $1.25, if you need something simple and you have a Dollar Tree near you and the Kent version is safe for you, by all means, go for it. I have made the the coconut version of the sweetened condensed caramel before. This is more of like a dulce de leche. We loved the consistency and the feel in your mouth. The recipe that I followed, I did it in the Instant Pot this time, as you saw, and it only cooked for like 35 minutes and then waited. I think that you get a whole lot more caramel flavor if you cook it longer. And so if you're going to do it in the Instant Pot like I did, I recommend if you want a complex flavor that you would cook it longer to get more of that deep caramel flavor. I would say with the oat milk, there's still kind of an oaty flavor. So I would say it kind of depends on your personal preference. We in general don't like coconut flavored things that aren't supposed to be. So in our house, like we eat a lot of curry and stuff like that, and the spices really do mask most of the coconut flavor. But my family doesn't like a normal soup that has coconut substituted in it. That's not something anyone would like. In the case of the sweetened condensed coconut milk, we all really like it a lot. So I'm going to be showing more recipes hopefully this winter that do use the sweetened condensed coconut milk. If I had a preference, I would choose the coconut version over the oat milk. And if you look at the labels, they both contain coconut. So the oat milk version does still contain coconut oil. So if you're allergic to coconut, the substituting the oat milk version doesn't help you any. So it's really just more of a preference of the flavor profile. If you're a family that drinks a lot of oat milk, then this is probably going to be your preference. All right, let's talk about the homemade caramels. Now, to be honest, this would be my preferred caramel if I have the time. Now, if I don't have the time to make it and sit and stir and I'm worried about messing it up or things like that, I'll go to either one of these options. They're both tasty. Oh, I forgot to mention that this one is really thick in the jar after refrigerated. And so it would still be one that you could dip in straight from the refrigerator. And none of these set up hard. You know, some caramels, if you're using a temperature thermometer and all of that, you can get your caramel super, super thick to where it would set up like a hard candy. None of these were cooked that long. Even the homemade version is still usable straight from the refrigerator. So I showed making my homemade caramel I first made it in my stainless steel little saucepan. And I will tell you, I had some technical issues with it. The sugar did accumulate on the outside of my pot. And so if you only have stainless steel, it totally works. Don't think you have to buy a nonstick pan just for this. It does work and you don't need to worry about it. That sugar just accumulates. Just let it stay there and consider it a loss. You may want to double your recipe if you need a lot more. This made, let's see, about a half a cup. It's really not that much, is it? About a half a cup of caramel for this recipe. So if you need a lot of caramel, double, triple, quadruple it. If you're having a party, I'd maybe quadruple it. Then you would get more like 2 cups of caramel. So the issue that I had is, if you look at my labels, this one is labeled homemade salted caramel. And this one I added less salted caramel. So my family all said that the salted caramel tasted way too salty to them. Personally, I still liked it. So if you like a more complex flavor to your caramel, I think that the salted caramel tasted really good, the recipe as written. But here's the issue. Because I used that stainless steel pot, a lot of my sauce actually got left on the rim around the outside of the pot before I added the salt. So what happened is that I followed the recipe almost exactly. I mean, my son thinks I put in a little too much salt, just kind of estimating. I normally just estimate salt and it's normally not a problem. In this case, because I had lost some of the volume of my caramel on the pan, it did actually end up being a lot more salt. So that was in the finished caramel. Does that make sense? And so I tried again. I didn't want to discount the homemade recipe because I messed up the salt amount. So this time I made the second batch in a larger nonstick skillet. I don't have a saucepan that's nonstick, and it worked wonderfully. It made it a lot easier to scrape the caramel up off the bottom of the pan, and that way I didn't have as much loss as well. And then because my family mentioned they don't love salted caramel, I chose to do like a 1/16 of a teaspoon of salt when I went ahead and added it. I just did a little bit, just enough to add the flavor enhancer component without it tasting like salted caramel. So if I was having an unlimited amount of time and energy, I would make the homemade version. I think it's the most complex tasting. It tastes the most like a gourmet caramel, if you will. The version from the Instant Pot with the Sweetened Condensed, it just is more like a dulce de leche. It has that creamier texture and a creamier flavor from it being coconut or oat milk. And it's delicious. This is what we used last year for all of our caramel apple needs, and everybody loved it. Honestly, the only reason there's any distinguishing is because we're tasting them all at once. If I had done each of these separately, each one would have been enjoyable in all of the circumstances I'm going to use it. Because we have braces in our house and I just don't love biting into caramel apples, we're not going to do like dipped caramel apples, and we'll do a caramel apple like board like you've seen all over Pinterest this time of year. And so all of these will work great for that. You can dip, you can put it on top of your favorite topping. This recipe I have used in caramel brownies before, and it is delicious. I highly recommend it. I will make sure I link that recipe as well down below. And so that would be my summary of my thoughts on caramel. Now we'll see. I'm going to do a little taste test at our party, and we'll see if other people have different favorites. I kind of suspect that the homemade one with less salt might end up being people's favorite, but I don't know. You know, my family sometimes really just goes for the items that they know and have had before, meaning like stuff straight from a bottle. So my personal favorite is the homemade recipe. I like it with the full amount of salt, but if your family's not used to salted caramel, definitely cut back on the salt.
Here is a look at the safe topping options I chose for our family, but use whatever safe treats, cereals, and candy work for your allergies. Here are all the ingredient lists for the items I chose. I recently even found the white Enjoy Life chips at a local specialty store and was so excited. These are from my Kroger affiliate store, the sprinkles are, and I love that they don't contain any food dye. The pretzels were a hands-down favorite for the caramel apple bar, and they make a perfect substitution for those people who would usually have nuts on their caramel apples. These candy corn are from Target, and they do have a long may contain this list. If you need a simple caramel apple bar for a very casual gathering or family dessert night, I recommend using a muffin tin to hold all of your toppings. It is so much easier to clean. For our party, I measured out all the toppings ahead of time and put them in this bin for easy transport outside later. Let's talk apples. I highly recommend you use a saltwater brine linked in the description box to keep your apples from turning brown. I'm going to start using this for school lunches from now on because it worked amazingly well. I soaked the apples in the brine for 10 minutes as the recipe describes and then rinsed them off. I wanted them nice and dry, so I laid them out on a paper towel lined baking sheet and left them in the fridge until party time. For entertaining, it helps me to have all the serving spots picked out ahead of time. So hours beforehand, I set the tablescape and my husband prepared the fire pit. We absolutely love our solo stove fire pit. It makes it so that our kids with asthma can spend some time around a fire pit safely, but we always make sure that the fire burns down for 30 to 60 minutes before they come outside, because that's when the fire is most smoke-free. Here's a look at our final product, a delicious and safe caramel apple bar that everyone could enjoy. If you notice, I put the most expensive specialty treats in these little tiny jars to help with quantity control. Just be aware that if you have little kiddos serving from those, that it was challenging to get the toppings out of such a small jar. So I guess you could say my method worked, but beware that they might spill them too. We actually loved having both the wedge and plank cut apples on the bar. Some people enjoyed one over another. But I can tell you that every single one of us agreed that we definitely prefer this style of caramel apple bar over eating an entirely dipped apple off of a stick. I hope this video was helpful for you in encouraging you to embrace the seasons that are easiest for your family's particular allergies. If you want more allergy-friendly content, please like this video, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Thanks so much for watching.